Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. You can visit the virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. For those seeking CPE credit today, you must answer at least 3 polling questions and remain on the session for its duration. Polls can be found under the Polls tab on the right-hand side of your console next to Chat. Afterwards, if you are eligible to receive credit, you will receive an email with a link to your certificates. If you have any questions on credits, please email cpe@argyleforum.com. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would love to introduce our moderator, Patricia Tatro, founder and fractional CFO at VantageView. We are excited to have Patricia and our panelists with us for a panel titled Leveraging AI and Automation for Smarter Financial Planning. Welcome, Patricia, and over to you.
Hi, thanks, Brittany. Yes, I'm Patricia Tatro, and I currently work with VantageView primarily as a fractional CFO. Our firm specializes working with small and medium-sized business companies, and we get involved in many areas with the business owners and their teams, whether it's clarity in numbers, financial modeling, decision-making, preparing for growth, exit, all of the things that you can imagine that these companies deal with. But today's program is really fun for me because AI is a game changer, and I have been a tech fan since I watched Jetsons as a kid. I worked with Fortune 500 companies during Y2K transitions, and today I get to help our clients work with their current systems, integrations, find new tech tools, just modernize things. And now AI is a big part of that. Yeah, it's really, really a great topic, and I can't wait to hear ideas from this group to learn more about FP&A and AI tools with FP&A. But yeah, Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. My name is Matt McFadden. I am a director of business finance for a national construction company based out of Boulder, Colorado. I have about 2 decades of FP&A life under my belt at this point in time. And I think that when I think about the possibilities of AI and automation and how it can help finance teams going forward, there's a lot of optimism and a lot of potential underlying it. So I'm excited to have this discussion today as well.
Sandy, would you like to give a quick introduction?
Sure. I'm Sandy Pham. I'm Vice President of Finance, working on the physician side of Kaiser Permanente, which is a healthcare organization. Also excited to have the conversation. I just see it as a huge potential boost in terms of assisting the team so that we as finance people could do what we really like, which is really analyze versus pulling and working data.
Thank you. Noel, how about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Noel. I am a solutions consultant here at Bill. Been here at Bill for about 9 years, but before that, worked at Square. So very familiar in terms of process automation when it comes to AP, AR, spend and expense, and how that all kind of rolls into the ERP and the financial planning and analysis arenas in terms of the data and accuracy and efficiency we can provide.
Thanks, Noel. Yes, Bill, or I used to say Bill.com. I've seen many clients use that tool very successfully. It's great for controls and things. So I'm a fan. But let me start in on some of the panel questions. Matt, I'd like to start with you. From your experience, how have you seen AI transform the core processes of finance, including FP&A, and where do you see the greatest ROI so far? Feel free to share any real world examples if you have.
Sure. So admittedly, I haven't seen our finance teams really integrate AI yet. I think we're still on maybe too close to the front edge of what AI can do to trust it in that capacity. From an automation standpoint, there's been a lot of work done on the data collection side and more on the BI output in terms of automation. But when I think about what AI can do in terms of putting a lot of just various pieces of information into one box, for lack of a better term, is the ability to have trend analysis performed with all of the power generated behind AI. And trend analysis, scenario analysis, sensitivity analyses, and I think that there's a lot of work that can be done very, very quickly with the power of AI that, as teams move forward, that can be leveraged to help better decision making. I'm going to hold off on going too far into there because I know that's in the next couple of questions on the potential risks to think about in that area. But that's where I see a lot of benefit in terms of, instead of a human having to sit down and analyze mountains of data, we can just dump it into a system and let the AI sift through everything to generate potential outcomes that can be analyzed, as Sandy talked about, which is what we prefer to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Noel, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. Just to add on to what Matt was saying, and what we're really seeing with AI is we're really just scratching the surface. We're seeing the shift of finance from being reactive to being more proactive. And instead of just looking back, finance teams can now predict what's coming with that AI modeling. Now, what we're seeing on the bill side within APAR spend and expense is AI-powered automation. So it's not something where you're working directly with the AI, but we're going to see the AI embedded within the products and services that we're utilizing. And that's really giving teams back hours every week by removing things like manual data entry or improving accuracy or automatically routing approvals. And so at Bill, our customers use these AI-driven data invoice capture and matching to cut that processing time by 80%. And that's real time back for strategic work like cash flow planning and FP&A.
Yeah, I've seen that in the real world with your product and other tools. Sandy, what about you?
Yeah.
Anything you want to?
Yeah, just adding to what Matt said, I think in terms of it right now, what we're really seeing is using AI in terms of adding to our trend analysis, particularly in terms of being able to grab more data than we're able to process longer, farther back, and from more multiple sources, which also adds to the information. We're really only in terms of really using it for projecting, forecasting. What we'll probably do look at it is in terms of more smaller scales in regards to it. Right now we're looking at, automating the monthly reporting information, things like that. And then really starting more in terms of seeing how well it can forecast in the same period year versus using multiple years, but just on simple things in terms of looking at particular expense line items, as well as things like FTE count, attrition, trend analysis in those ways. And then based on that, I think toward Matt's point, once we feel some comfort, because as we all know, forecasting and scenario planning is an iterative process, even done by a human. As you do it, you refine your assumptions, you take in more information, you have more data point, and as we get some experience in terms of the accuracy of projecting forward, we can start expanding, how we play with it.
Oh, I know. I'm so excited. There's a lot of great things out there, but there's still so much being built in that forecasting side. So, Sandy, I'm going to stay with you for a second. Going to the next question. What are the key considerations when integrating automation into existing FP&A workflows, without causing disruption?
Right. I think the most important thing you could do is the same thing I would say in terms of automating before we had AI. Start with cleaning your data. It's all based on your data quality, like we all know. I think most of us don't have the issue that we don't have enough data. I think my issue has always been we have too much data. We have data from different sources. We don't always have a single source of truth. And sometimes you have conflicting data. So you have to spend time in terms of figuring out how to make sure the data you feed into your system is really clean, quality data you trust, so you can trust the analysis coming out of it. And then two, most importantly, how to structure your data. We all use the same thing. We all use the same chart of account, but do we always categorize things the same way? As you're taking the information, what we call the same categories, are they the same? Looking in terms of that, verifying the reliable data source. If there are different data sources having the same information slightly different, spending the time to dig down why. Because like I said, I think at the end of the day, whether it's us as human doing the analysis or a system to augment and support us, whatever comes out of analysis is good as what you put in. So it's not as glamorous, but I would really spend time structuring and cleaning and verifying the quality of your data.
Yeah, I like that because, right, all budgets and forecasts are wrong, but let's do our best to make sure they're actually educated guesses and, you know, start with a good solid base. Um, but yeah, Noel, can anything you want to share here on this one?
Yeah, I would probably say just as far as considerations when integrating that automation, really comes down to working within your teams, finding those pain points. Where is it bottlenecking for your team, and then how's it kind of bottlenecking for them, and kind of get that buy-in from them. The best approach I find is really to start small and integrate where it naturally fits. Maybe not try to force something. Don't try to overhaul everything all at once. Jump in both feet, maybe dip the toe a little bit just to make sure it's something that's a good fit. But really, the focus should be around the data quality, making sure your systems talk to each other, which is huge. API driven integrations make that so much easier. And so, one of the customers here at Bill is because we can plug directly into the accounting system like QuickBooks or NetSuite. So, you don't have to change your entire workflow or have to change systems entirely to benefit from automation, but also being able to be flexible within APIs where instead of being, completely segmented, you're able to create a financial ecosystem that can really help automate a lot with AI driven tools.
No, that's great. And I like you pointing out, what are your bottlenecks? What are your pain points? Because that's going to be less disruption if you're solving problems and if you're just saying, hey, everything's new, which sometimes I suppose that has to happen too. But I like that
Does.
approach a lot to avoid the disruption. Uh, Matt, anything you want to add?
Sure. Yeah, I think Noel made a great point about finding the bottlenecks, and sometimes we tend to maybe automate things that were virtually automated already. We've even with human involvement, and so again, finding where you really maximize the value of the automation, and then to Sandy's point and also Noel's, it's data hygiene and accuracy
Mhm.
is key when I think about what AI can do. It's you can fall very easily into garbage in, garbage out, but there's also a lot of good hygienic data that may be a
Mm.
one-time item. And so as the AI kind of iterates through its own learning, as it were, as Sandy mentioned, also is kind of helping refine those parameters and kind of redrawing the sandbox for the AI to play within becomes a very key consideration. And so a concern going into it would be, to be very cautious about overly relying on the output too soon, and really parallel testing the outcomes that you're getting through the automated reporting or the AI generated reporting with your own underlying assumptions. And then again, it's the trick's going to be finding that nice mesh point where the data becomes reliable enough to kind of put a little more trust on the AI side.
Yeah, and I think that kind of connects with what Sandy was saying too about having clean data, understanding your numbers, and
Mhm.
but yeah, we don't get to turn our brains off with AI. But I feel it just makes us stronger, and when we have those kinds of tools. So, but yeah, well, I'm going to go right into another question here, kind of change gears a bit. Noel, if you'd like to start us off, how can finance teams effectively leverage predictive analytics to improve scenario planning or better navigate uncertainty? Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think AI, what it's able to do is really make scenario planning faster and more realistic. You can simulate multiple what if outcomes in just a few minutes versus kind of brainstorming within the team. Also, can take things like new events within the news or economic policy that gets put out there and kind of build those out and how that might affect the business overall. So it's something that can be very quick, very fast, but also you want to make sure that you're double checking the data, making sure everything kind of makes sense in terms of what the AI logic might be. But it's about moving from quarterly updates to more of a continuous forecasting. Finance teams are better prepared for those surprises as they do come through. And so what we kind of do here is we help out with customers improving their visibility into when cash is coming in or going out here at Bill. And that data will flow straight into their models so they can plan with confidence.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Matt, anything from your experience you'd like to share or thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, I think Noel hit on a really good point about using the information to generate both what if scenarios and then also what does it take scenarios. One of the things we're constantly trying to look and make decisions on in finance, and especially on the FP&A side, are what should the targets look like? And so there's always an underlying set of, maybe it's assets or underlying set of capabilities that can generate a certain amount of profit. And given your revenue and your project margins and your cost structures, there's kind of a range of outcomes. And so as you can feed more data in more real time, and you can again fine tune where those parameters are, I think we'll wind up with a better, faster answer of what is, that kind of good, better, best outcome scenario look like. And then on the downside, again, you can have the downside risk scenario planning, and it's about getting faster answers to analyze and get that portfolio of options available to the company. And so again, I think, not to be a broken record, but we're right on the very, very, very surface level of what can happen. But there's a lot of power that can be generated out of this.
Right. No, I agree. Sadie, what do you have? I can't wait. Some of the stuff that you talked about, I think, is going to fit in really nicely on
Well,
this one.
I think very much what they both said, which is that, it's going to be continually to be iterative. The reality is the economy change, your competitor landscape change. So as much as you're refining it, you're going to always be working your scenario planning and your forecast just like you do now. I think exactly toward anything else, as Noel said, it's like a new system. You're going to need to continue to parallel test it, right, to make sure that you can trust the information. But I would also look at doing retro analysis. As you're refining it, you can feed it up to a certain amount of information and see what it would have given you against your actuals. And then, like anything else in scenario planning, there's not one perfect answer. Have a range. Have a range in terms of what's acceptable within it. Figure out based on what you have in terms of your baseline, which is what we're all doing now. Is it giving you something better, a tighter range? Is it more predictive with more information? If it's not, then you know what? You've got extra information that's not adding to it at all. Yeah. But as I said, what works really well for this year, these next 3 months, these quarters, is not going to work well next quarter because we all know how dynamic everything has been, right? So there's not going to be a perfect model. We're probably all going to continue to work and refine it. And that's not a failure of the model. It's the fact that we're actually doing what we have to and keeping up with the world and changing around us.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I mean, just understanding all the different complexities that can change, the model, can improve the model. But like you said, are we doing a better job now? If we're not, what does that mean? And keep going from there. So I love this topic. I'm so excited to see what's coming and even just to continue to get to know the current tools we have. Matt, I wanted to bring you on to the next one, have you start this one off. Again, it's kind of changing gears, but this is so relevant to businesses. What strategies have you found to be most effective in building a finance team that is both tech savvy and strategically aligned to the implementation of new AI enabled tools?
Yeah, I think foundationally it starts with building better finance personnel and building really strong capabilities within the team. You have to be able to have an understanding of what answers should look like or what parameters an answer should fall within to be able to gauge whether you're getting value out of the automation or getting value out of the AI generated answers. And so, strategically, I think that it's pretty old school. It's teaching people how to perform the analyses and do the work on their own so that as the new information comes in, they have kind of an idea already forming in their head of what the outcome, maybe the spectrum of answers should be, so that when they get answers from the AI or the automation, they can at least sense check it. Otherwise, you're just relying on the answer and you're back into it's unclear whether you have clean information or not. I do think it also helps to kind of push the team to say, be open-minded, to not be so closed off and stuck in maybe we have to do it this way because we've always done it that way. But be open to the idea that we have this new tool that can empower us going forward. It shouldn't be competing with us. It should be helping us. But at the same time, again, I'll always go back to that foundational, teach people how to do the analysis on their own so that they can understand whether they're getting trustworthy information out of the automated reporting.
Oh, great. No, thanks so much, Matt. Sandy, do you have any thoughts on how to build this team that has this?
Yeah, I think that it's the key thing. Re-emphasize the fact that I know everyone worries about AI replacing jobs. I don't think that's the case. I do think it's enables, but I think most importantly, it requires even more to have human oversight if you have AI. At the end of the day, someone needs to be accountable for the information. You can't point to your screen. Someone needs to be able to translate and communicate the information to the operator. You can't send them something just to read, right? Someone still has to be there. Someone has to have the conversation. Someone has to make the human judgment in terms of what to refine and what to have them understand why the information is coming out not the way they expect, right? So that recalls in terms of human judgment. I think also at the end of the day, I find that with people, or at least the teams I've worked with, is not so much about resistance, but people don't know what to do with this new technology, right? And at the end of the day, part of it is there does need to be ongoing training and support. We understand the tool, but it's almost like we also have to learn how to use the prompts. And it's like anything else when we all learned Excel. You could go take a class in Excel, but until you played with it, until you had to figure out how to do something and you started Googling how to do it or asking your neighbor, you didn't really learn it and you didn't really understand how powerful it was to help you with what you needed. So part of that is, I think might have said it before, but just getting people to comfortable with it in terms of playing with it, playing with it so that they can learn what it can and cannot do. But really, I do think there is a skill set in the prompts in terms of how you ask a question and sharing that knowledge like you would anything else with a new system.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What about you, Noel? Anything you want to add in on this one?
I think Sandy hit the nail on the head. It's really a matter of just trying out the new tools that are out there. I mean, even for your own personal thing, jump onto something like GPT. Keep it really simple for yourself. Try to help automate some things or get some data for your own, personal usage. And when you start practicing with these tools, your brain kind of sparks when you start commingling that with your brain, your work brain, if you will. So you can kind of understand, well, how would I utilize this type of tool for what I'm currently doing? And then just kind of dip the toe into the water and get more familiar. And that's really what it's going to come down to. Not everyone is going to have to turn into some sort of data scientist, but they will need to build comfort with those new tools and new ways of working. So upskilling, hiring for even tech curiosity. If you have someone who's really familiar with, a particular AI tool, how might that help the team overall? And kind of creating tool champions inside of that team, which will help build those powerful strategies. So you can really see adoption skyrocket when you have one or two finance leads or any department lead really become AI advocates internally. And suddenly the team as a whole becomes more tech forward.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I think you really took this conversation in an important place. It's kind of when you're hiring, you're actually bringing in new people who, what did you say, tech curious? I mean, when I know as we built our team at Vantage View, it has been important to have people passionate about technology. Whether they know how to use every tool doesn't necessarily matter. It's sure comfort in certain things, but do they see the power of automation and does that excite them? Because that's going to help our clients who often can't even imagine what's possible, wouldn't even know what to ask for. So, but yeah, it's bringing in strong people, exciting the current teams, and giving them that real world experience, just like you said, Sandy, with Excel. I mean, if you're in there, it's you don't know what it can do until you're trying to solve a problem or someone's coaching you, or maybe the class is relevant. But yeah, I learned all my Excel 20 something years ago from just a great person when I was working with a company who just wanted to show me everything. I'm like, oh, what? Do this? So it's great. But anyway, I digress. So it's just an important topic, having the right people to make this all happen. Sandy, for our last question, before we kind of get into thoughts and check questions for the group, I wanted to ask you about what are the biggest challenges and risks finance leaders face when adopting AI and automation, and how can those be addressed?
Right. One we talked about, which was, the integrity of your data. But two, obviously, the more we do this, the more we get to see our IT friends, and the more they all look in terms of security. So part of it is what we've been talking about in terms of, if you have an environment where you have an enterprise license and the information you're feeding in and what you're testing out in your scenarios are locked into the enterprise. I mean, it may be archived somewhere, but it is locked in. That's the key in terms of it. And maybe that's the other part, that organizations have to think through how they're going to manage AI. Just because you're not putting together an enterprise license doesn't mean, toward Noah's point, people aren't playing with it. And what you don't want is to have a free version of ChatGPT with something floating out down there because someone loaded a PDF. So part of it is also in terms of the challenge of, hey, as this becomes more real, as Noah said, as people incorporate this into their own lives and they start wanting to be more functional at work, the company and the team must come up with some rules in terms of how to manage having AI and protecting the information within the company environment.
Oh, that's so important. Oh, glad you brought that up. Noel, do you have anything you want to add on this one?
Yeah, so some of the top challenges we generally see, obviously, we talked about change resistance. We've been talking about making sure the AI outputs align with real world context, but also your data privacy concerns. You don't necessarily want to throw internal company information directly into
Mhm.
AI. You may want to, just keep an eye out for that. And that's where AI powered tools can help with that control and visibility around that data and the integrity of it. But really start small, make the results explainable. My kids are doing long division. And so one of the problems they're having is they have to show their work, right? So that's kind of the same thing when you're utilizing these tools and strategies from AI. Show your work, show how it kind of arrived to that place, and focus on the quick wins and the low hanging fruit.
Mhm.
And security and trust are absolutely central to what you need to be utilizing for AI powered tools. So making sure there's SOC 2 compliance, ensuring the automation doesn't mean losing control of your data or processes.
Yeah, no, that's very important. Yeah, the security keeps coming up. It's huge. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll throw a third voice on the security side and to just say to not ever throw your private company information into a public setting. Should go without saying, but it's really good to reinforce that. I think one of the biggest challenges, again, it's twofold. It's one, being very careful that you've got the right information being fed in. So whether it's at the ERP level or how do you integrate some of the other accounting entries that are not made at the ERP level, they're made, somewhere further along the process, to get the right information into the model. And then on the back end of that, it's being very cautious on how overly reliant you are on the answers for a long time. And again, finding that mesh point where the data becomes reliable. It's not, I think it would be good to go into the AI version of FP&A with the assumption that the data is unreliable, the answers are unreliable for a long time. And again, that gets back to building strong finance personnel to help sense check, to figure out when are we kind of reaching that mesh point where the AI is accurately providing us valuable output. I think, how do you address it? I think Noel made a great point. You find tech curious people. I think it gets easier as we continue to move forward, and the people coming out of college now and maybe even into their early 30s, they've just grown up with the internet. They've grown up in a much more tech involved world, and so it'll be kind of important for those of us on this call, not to belie anybody's age on this call, but people who grew up before the internet was so prevalent. Again, to kind of be open-minded, but never lose the focus that there's only one side of this that gets held accountable, and it's not the AI. And so again, that is really reinforcing that it is the person or people who are accountable for the answers. And so really drive home that accountability all the way along the process, because the first CFO that gets on an earnings call and blames AI for poor performance should not have a good time, in my own opinion.
I didn't know.
I'll wait for that day.
Yeah, it'll happen. That's a good one. A good prediction. It probably already has somewhere. We haven't heard it yet, but I can see that. So, I'd like to go to final thoughts now. Just kind of, on this topic, with whether we're addressing something we've already hit, or maybe you have some other final thoughts on the topic that we haven't brought out yet. Noel, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as far as what you're looking for, and really what I work in is around AI powered tools, is really finding automation within that. So this way you have control over that data. You have a reliable source that's kind of already done this within the space to build up that accuracy and that trust with you. So that's definitely something that's going to be major when you try to implement something that's a little bit more automated or AI powered.
No, I agree. Matt, would you like to add any final thoughts on these topics?
Sure. I think that, AI and automation it's really a continuation. We've been automating forever at this point. I mean, whether it was inside of Excel or in an Access database or in a BI. And so this is simply like the next great phase of that process. And again, I think that there's a lot of value coming down the pike in the future, whether you're in a multi-billion-dollar company or a multi-thousand-dollar HVAC company or whatever you have. There's always room for efficiency and improvement, and there's a lot of benefit, I think, to be had through automation and AI. Just maybe not today, maybe tomorrow, but we're getting there.
I agree. How about you, Sandy?
I agree with what they said. AI is a natural evolution of the automation trip that we've been on. So it is new and exciting, but it's really not that new, to be really open about it. It's something that we've all had experience in. I think the other thing I would just say is, once again, I would just plug in terms of the human oversight. At the end of the day, AI will help us in terms of the data and the quality of the analysis. But at the end of the day, based on that analysis, we still owe what does it mean? What are you recommending in terms of it? And the human that has to sit at the table to be involved with the critical decision making that needs to be involved based on the analysis. So once again, I don't think it'll be anything that people have to worry about in terms of, losing your teammate. But as finance professional, it is counting on us in terms of what do you do with this information now that you have it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, honestly, this impacts all businesses, and you're right. You guys said it. We didn't just start here with AI. We weren't all on pens and paper and no computers. It's been an evolution, and this is just a very exciting one. And, some people are frightened, some people aren't, but it's not going anywhere. So I think we can use this, in finance and accounting as a way to get our heads up a little bit, not, head down trying to do stuff, get our heads up, have real conversations, get quicker data, bring in the right tools that do the right thing, make this part of every company's strategic planning, is to understand what are the company's pain points, what do we need to do with the teams to bring them, get them interested as much as possible, but find out what their pain points are. What is the thing that's going to excite them? You start to do this as a company, involve everyone, and you might turn a lot of people who say, "Oh, I don't do technology," to get a little bit excited about it. I've seen a couple of examples of that because they just didn't know. So I'm very hopeful that we're going to see some very positive things, and yeah, like hopefully not on investor calls where people just say that the AI is not going so well. But anyway. If no one else has anything to share from this panel, I'd like to turn it over to Brittany to see what we have going on in Q&A.
Great. Well, guys, thank you so much for such an insightful panel. As a reminder, audience members can still enter questions, and we could go ahead and review a few that came through. So this one I'll just pose to the group. It asks, what types of financial decisions are best suited for AI-powered insights, and which still require human judgment? Not sure if anyone has
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
I think it's similar to what we said. I can jump in terms of it, what's best suited for, AI powered insights are a lot of the more routine reporting your ratios in terms of it, what involves the human judgment, the recommendation, owning the recommendation for operations, and being able to also say, hey, based on this, if a factor change, what would it mean and how would your recommendation change? And being able to explain and have a dialogue so people understand what you're basing the decision on and what is still also movable.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. I think when we start seeing some of the tools that go out there and do some of that extra research for us, so we're more aware of what's going on in the market with our competitors, in my case, maybe client updates, but getting those market insights to kind of trigger us so that we might say, what's that? What's going on? Any new tax law changes. I feel like some of those things becoming part of it could be really exciting. Anyone else on this one?
Sure. Just those processes around FP&A, helping with automating those, such as like your AP, your AR, your spend and expense, being able to get documents in and reading the information directly off of it versus looking at the document, typing it in, then getting it into your accounting system. Just making that whole area easier so then you have a solid data set to work with when you go in to make your decisions.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I would agree that the transactional side is where I think you can have a lot of good fit currently with the AI and the automated frontier. I think Sandy nailed it. It's you can use the AI to give you that landscape and provide a landscape view, but it's still the human judgment's got to be required on the recommendations and making that choice because there's everything's so dynamic. The decision you make has downstream impacts that haven't necessarily been fed into the AI. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks, guys. I think this is a really good, and sorry if you really touched on this already, but kind of a follow-up question. In regards to compliance, are there any other considerations, when you are implementing AI or automation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll definitely touch on that. That's probably one of the top questions I'll get is, well, how is my data secure? If I'm entering in all this data, who actually owns the data is a big question I'll get. But also the compliances behind it. Are you SOC 2 Type 2 compliant? Is my data going to be secure? What type of securities do you have in place? What type of, I guess you could say, regulations or training you might put your staff through that's kind of managing my data are important things to ask for.
Great. Any other thoughts?
Well, I see, expense software help with setting up rules and things that maybe would help you with audit readiness, documentation, certain pieces of information. And this isn't new. So I think we'll only get this, it's just going to get better and better. But I like that. Oh, okay, this type of transaction, we know the government is going to require this in case of an audit or things like that. Just those types of things that keep us compliant, right? And then help us kind of enforce that through the businesses, what we know, what we've learned, and any software that can trigger that and keep us in check too is great.
Great. Sandy, Matt, any thoughts? And if not, we can move on to this next question, which asks, and again, I think you guys kind of touched on this throughout your conversation, but especially for organizations looking to really begin AI or automation implementations, what are the key first steps finance teams should take when beginning any of these integrations? Do you guys have any suggestions or recommendations?
Well, I can start off. I know we've all talked about, making sure you understand the data you're putting into it. The second thing is really understanding the current workflow, really understanding where your information comes from, who's the owner of each of that piece of data and the source and all the handoffs that you have. And then in terms of it, you can just look at the bottlenecks and the pain points, which everyone knows, where is on variant analysis? Where is it when you're waiting on something? Where is it where there's an exception that people need to make out? But I think part of looking at how to integrate and update your is understanding what's the workflow you currently have. And a lot of times we breeze past it because it's like no one always does that part, so I never think about it, right? But yes, as a team, you really do need to figure out where all the information is, because you need to figure out how to replicate it and replicate it in a reliable manner. And just because no does it and I don't need to think about it doesn't mean that it doesn't have to get built into what you're replacing.
Yeah, I would add to that to be, and Noel said it. He said the words very, very, very well when he said start small. And I'll add just on top of that, be very intentional and don't just throw it out to the entire finance organization. Like, hey, we're all going to be AI curious now. Pick a team and have them dedicated to the function. And again, like Sandy said, let this specific team go through the work, the legwork of getting the data quality and data integrity built in, and do that cross-functional partnership with the organization, find pain points before we just kind of throw it wide open to the organization, because then you'll get a better targeted starting point instead of kind of having, everybody, however big your team is, you have that many starting points. It'd be better to start more focused, in my opinion.
Yep, absolutely. Finding something that's going to fit naturally, I think, within your current workflow, just to start out, that's probably the best way you can mitigate a lot of that risk that AI might pose, is find a process that could be automated through AI and just kind of naturally fit that in. It's something small, it's low hanging fruit. You build the trust, but of course, AI is also learning at the same time.
Excellent. And I know we're just talking about teams and, these integrations. So, in regard to like talent and teams, is there ever like reluctance to change from employees when implementing, these new tools or technologies? And if so, how do you address this?
Yeah, I haven't really dealt with reluctance. I think it's, for me, I've dealt with where people just don't understand how this fits into what they currently do, because it's so hard to picture it. They've been doing it so long. They're sort of like, but what do I need it for? And I think that's really to the point in terms of the workflow. There's something you don't like, right? There's the boring data consolidation. There's the boring variance analysis. Have them choose something that they don't enjoy, that they can play with in terms of having it replaced. And that's at the point where they get a direct benefit, like what we talked about in terms of the Excel, that I think you'll really spark some interest in terms of, oh, what else can it do?
Right.
Yep, absolutely. Take something you don't like, plug it into an AI, and just ask, hey, what can I do to automate this? And it's going to spit out some suggestions for you. Start going into a rabbit hole a little bit. So, I mean, just starting with a simple question, just get a little bit more familiar with the tools that are out there. And as you kind of expand your repertoire, you'll see there's other AI tools that are more specific to what you're looking to do.
Yeah, I've seen resistance for sure. And it usually just helps when you have the people that are passionate about it kind of grab onto it and share it, get that momentum going a little bit. Not everyone's going to be happy. That won't happen. But if you do it, what we keep hearing, find out the pain points. If you do these things, I think it gets better. And well, it's not going anywhere. So hopefully we can get everyone happy about it, but or more than not, at least.
Yeah, I would say that I've seen and been a part of multiple just changes, not even automation, but just kind of reporting output changes. There's always been resistance. I've been a resistant one in my career, but it takes one or two champions to kind of be that positive influence on the group. And then again, when you have small wins and you can start to show the value even in small ways, it'll open people's eyes up to the possibilities. Taking unpleasant tasks and making them less unpleasant is always a good way to get started.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. We do have time for a couple more questions that came through. I know no one can predict the future, but can you guys share your thoughts on maybe what, the future of FP&A looks like in the next 3 to 5 years, especially as these AI capabilities continue to evolve?
Yeah, I think the next 3 to 5 years is probably still a learning phase. In my experience, the finance function is where we are not early adopters in a lot of things. And a lot of that comes to the fact that we have a large responsibility with the financial data and the integrity of that data for the company. And so I think the next maybe 1 to 3 years, and even in the next 3 to 5, is a big learning curve for the finance teams to get comfortable with. We'll probably be on the back end of the departments in a company getting comfortable turning our data over to AI. But I think that you'll see continued integration in the processes, and it'll be a little bit more seamless. I think where Noel's talking about the AR/AP side maybe comes into more month-end reporting becoming automated. Maybe it comes into forecasts going from quarterly to monthly to weekly to kind of just getting faster, and kind of let fewer and fewer surprises at the executive level in a company. And so I think that it'll just kind of continue to shift, but I'm not sure I see a huge whole sea change in the next 3 years, maybe in 5.
Yeah, I do agree that finance people are not usually early adopters. We're a cautious bunch of professionals. But I do think that, the things that are much less interesting to us, the consolidations, the variance analysis, I see us spending less time on that, more time in terms of the what if, the scenario planning, and the recommendations in terms of really spending more with operators than the data to be able to say, what does this mean and how can it be used and what would be helpful to you, and getting their perspective as well, because we'll have time for those conversations.
I think.
And
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, within the next, 3 to 5 years, I fully expect more AI power driven tools to be out there that have more accuracy and more automation. I know even for us, we're working on the capability of just throwing the document in, it automatically reads everything, codes everything, routes it for approval based off your rules, and you're pretty much good to go to the races there in terms of executing approvals and payments. And even then, even possibly automating your payments with a trusted source. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the next 3 to 5 years. And we're going to see a little bit more adoption in terms of your own work efficiency, utilizing tools to build out a really nice looking report or presentation. Those are the things we're going to see on the back end a little bit further.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was saying things that increase accuracy, build efficiency. These are our next steps in growing. And I think of how accounting operates with other departments. And so some of the requests, they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. They don't see the big picture of why it's needed, why the accounting finance teams are asking for certain things or certain documentation or receipts or explanations. But the tools that make that easier, the tools that get that started for them where they can review quickly, are so important. And they're definitely a good first step. And no plug to Bill intended, but Bill.com, Bill was one of my first exposures to some of that years ago. And when I started seeing how it was helping the AP teams, and it was, it was all right there. Yeah, you still had to check things, and it remembered approval processes and stuff. So I haven't seen what new things you've been doing over there. So I'm sure it's much better even today. But it's still a tool I recommend to people all the time. And there's other things out there I've seen, that do similar things. And that's just, these are building blocks for automation, efficiency. And when it can integrate with your systems, that's huge.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. We have time for one last question. I think this is a good question to close out with as well. So this attendee is just curious on AI tools that you guys are currently excited about, and what has been the most effective and efficient way you guys have found to ensure AI-produced data is accurate. If anyone wants to jump in on this one.
Sure. I think I might have mentioned on the previous question, but we are working on the ability of line item level reading. We've high level reading for things like your vendor name, invoice number, invoice date, total amount. But now we're going to be able to pull descriptions and be able to pull line item amounts. And then with the descriptions, we can run modeling on the back end. Well, if it's this vendor for this date, and this is the description, how was it coded last time? Let's pull that in. Is that going to be accurate? And then we send it off for approval where you can just make the adjustments. So basically just bring in the document, take about 5-10 seconds, and then it's sent off to your very first approver, or even sent off for payment. That's some of the excitement that I have. And as far as that data set behind it, ensuring that we process over 30 million documents every year here at Bill. So having that large data set, especially for a company that's been around for 20 years, is going to be wonderful in terms of the accuracy just right out of the gate.
Yeah. I know we're running out of time, but there's a tool called Just Pay that I know the founder, and I'm one of the people that develop it. And we're talking about what it's doing. It is reading contracts, it's assessing revenue recognition, building the invoices, it's doing all of these things, and it's you can even get it to watch the progression of these deals. So as we see more and more tools that really start to sound like operational at first, it they're finance because everything's accounting and finance at the end of the day. So I think we'll all be friends with that sort of thing.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much. That is all the time we have for Q&A. But thank you again for such an insightful panel discussion. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event. Our next session will begin after a quick break at 12:45 Eastern, which will be a keynote titled Evolving Role of FP&A from Reporting to Strategic Leadership. Please click on the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you all so much again.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.